So I was looking at some agricultural reports this morning, the top crops in the world,
Hmm.
and you look at corn, you look at soy, and everything about them feels incredibly modern. They're precision engineered, updated every season.
It's high-tech biology. It really
Yeah.
is. Corn yields have, what, increased sixfold in the last century because those genetics are just constantly being optimized.
Right, like a Formula One pit crew. But then you get to the potato, it's the third most important food crop on the planet, feeds billions of people.
It is.
But when you actually dig into how we grow it, it feels like we've suddenly gone back to the 1800s.
It's a really jarring disconnect, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have this sleek, modern system for almost everything, but the potato.
Yeah.
It's basically running on Victorian-era software.
Windows 95, maybe.
We're trying to run the modern food system on the biological equivalent of Windows 95.
Yes, and that's exactly what we're unpacking today. We have a whole stack of documents here, including this manifesto called Potato, the Reboot
Yeah.
by Austin Walther. And the central argument isn't just that potato farming is hard. It's that the potato itself, genetically, is, well, broken. And fixing it might just be the holy grail of agriculture.
Broken is a strong word, but I'd say it's accurate. The documents lay out a roadmap for a complete system reboot. We're talking about a shift from what they call the tuber age to the seed age.
And it involves jailbreaking a genome and debugging spaghetti code.
Exactly. But before we get to the fix, we really have to understand the problem.
I was going to say, I need to understand this. I buy potatoes at the store. They look fine.
Uh-huh.
Why do these documents claim the whole system is a disaster waiting to happen?
It all comes down to the architecture of the genome itself.
Yeah.
To stick with that computing analogy, modern crops like corn, and humans for that matter, are diploids.
Okay, so diploid means 2 copies of every chromosome, one from mom, one from dad.
Exactly. It's a clean system. It's agile. We can call it a laptop architecture.
Right.
But the cultivated potato, it's a tetraploid. It has 4 copies of every single chromosome.
Okay, but isn't 4 copies just, more backup? Why is that a bad thing?
In the wild, sure, that redundancy can be good. But for breeding, it is an absolute nightmare.
How so?
Okay, imagine you're trying to breed a new potato that's resistant to a virus. If you're working with a diploid, like corn, the math is simple. You have a 1 in 4 chance of that trait showing up in the next generation.
So you plant a few seeds, you'll probably find a winner.
Right. But in a tetraploid system, because you've got 4 copies all mixing around, your probability drops to about 1 in 36.
Wow, that's a massive difference.
It creates what geneticists call genetic gridlock. There's just so much noise in the signal that it's statistically almost impossible to fix bugs in the code.
You can't isolate the good traits from the bad ones.
You can't. You drag everything along with it.
Yeah.
And this is why the industry is essentially frozen in time.
The manifesto mentions the russet Burbank. That's the classic baking potato, right? The one McDonald's uses for its fries.
That's the one. Do you have any idea when the russet Burbank was released?
I'm gonna guess the 70s? Maybe the 80s.
1902.
You're kidding. 1902, the dominant potato in our food supply is over 120 years old.
And we're still eating it because we literally haven't been able to breed anything significantly better that has all those exact qualities. The software is just too tangled to update.
So because we can't breed them easily from seed, we just clone them. That's the standard practice, right? You cut up a potato, you plant the chunk, and you get a clone.
Correct. But that leads to the second massive failure point in the system, the Xerox effect.
The Xerox effect. So just degrading quality over time, like making a copy of a copy.
Think about it biologically. If you take a clone, then you clone that clone, and you do that for 50 years.
Yeah.
The plant just accumulates baggage. We call it viral load.
Okay.
Every time that tuber goes into the soil, it picks up viruses, bacteria, epigenetic errors.
It's like bit rot for a plant.
Precisely. The image degrades. The yield drops. The vigor just disappears.
But farmers are still growing potatoes. So how do they get around this? How do they stop the rot?
They have to rely on this incredibly expensive flush-out system. They're constantly going back to sterile labs where they grow tissue cultures in test tubes just to clean the stock.
So they have to reboot it manually every few years.
Yes, and then they grow those out in protected greenhouses for years just to generate enough clean seed potatoes to sell to a commercial farmer.
That seems absurdly inefficient. It takes years just to get the starting material ready.
5 to 7 years. It is a huge logistical lift just to get back to baseline. And it leaves the whole system vulnerable to what we might call a zero-day exploit.
And now you're talking about the Irish potato famine scenario?
Exactly. The Great Famine happened because Ireland relied on a single variety, the Irish lumper. a monoculture of clones.
So every single plant had the exact same immune system.
Every plant. So when late blight arrived, it didn't just kill a few plants, it killed everything.
It just blew past the firewall instantly.
Instantly. And the terrifying part is, because of our reliance on cloning and a few dominant varieties like the russet Burbank, we are still running that exact same risky architecture. We have no defense in depth.
Okay, so we have a bloated, glitchy genome we can't update, and we're copying it until it rots. I can see why they want to reboot. So what's the fix? How do you turn a tetraploid desktop into a diploid laptop?
You have to simplify the genome. You have to cut the chromosomes from 4 copies down to 2. And we've known this for a long time. But there was a major barrier.
A biological lock of some kind.
Yeah, you could call it that. Diploid potatoes have a mechanism called self-incompatibility. It's like a natural form of DRM, digital rights management.
So the plant physically cannot pollinate itself.
It cannot, which makes sense in nature. You want to avoid inbreeding.
Sure.
But in agriculture, if you want to create a high-performance hybrid like we did with corn, you must inbreed. You have to create these parental lines that are incredibly uniform and pure.
And you can't do that if the plant refuses to mate with itself. So we were stuck.
We were stuck. We knew diploids were better, but we couldn't breed them. Until the jailbreak. Breeders found a specific gene called SLY the S-locust inhibitor.
A skeleton key.
It is the skeleton key. It effectively disables that self-incompatibility. It lets the pollen tube grow even if it's from the same plant. It basically gives breeders root access to the system.
Okay, so now you can self-pollinate. But I want to go back to this inbreeding part. The documents talk about purging, and it sounds pretty violent. You start inbreeding these potatoes, and most of them just die.
They crash. They crash hard. But you have to understand, this isn't a bug. It's a feature.
How is killing your crop ever a feature?
Because those plants died from what we call lethal recessive genes, all that bad code that was hiding in a tetraploid mess. When you start inbreeding, you force that bad code to the surface. You expose all the bugs.
So the plants that die are the ones you didn't want in the first place.
Exactly. You are performing the ultimate quality control. You purge the bad genetics from the system. After a few generations, you're left with these inbred lines that are, well, they're weak and scrawny, but their genetic code is clean. It's pure.
And then?
Then you cross 2 of those clean lines together, and you get this explosion of hybrid vigor. The offspring are uniform, robust, high-yielding.
Right.
And suddenly, you can release a new variety in 2 to 4 years instead of 15.
That brings us to the logistics, because this isn't just about the genes. It's about the physical thing the farmer buys. We're moving from planting a potato to planting a tiny seed.
This is the hardware upgrade, and the numbers here are just staggering.
I was looking at this in the notes. To plant 1 hectare the old way, a farmer needs 2,500 kilograms of tubers.
2.5 tons.
2.5 tons of potatoes you have to truck around.
Heavy, perishable, rotting tubers that need climate-controlled storage and gentle handling.
And with this new true potato seed...
25 grams.
Hold on, 25 grams. That fits in a standard mailing envelope.
It's a 99.99% compression ratio.
But let me play devil's advocate. If I'm a farmer, 2.5 tons of tubers. That feels robust. If I drop an envelope of seeds in a puddle, I've lost my whole crop. Isn't that a new kind of fragility?
That's a valid concern about handling, but think about the supply chain resilience. If a truck breaks down or a warehouse loses power, you lose those tons of tubers, the seeds. You can store them in a domestic freezer for 20 years. It's like having a cloud backup for the food supply.
Okay, fair point. And what about disease? You mentioned the viral load in the tubers. Do the seeds carry that same baggage?
And that's maybe the best part. Botanical seeds have a natural biological firewall. The major pathogens, late blight, PVY, all those viruses, they don't generally pass through the seed embryo.
So every season is a completely fresh start.
Every season is a clean slate. No more bin-run disease cycles. And this is revolutionary for the developing world. The documents highlight this yield gap in places like sub-Saharan Africa.
They're getting really low yield.
Terribly low. Maybe 8 tons per hectare when the potential is 40. And it's mostly because they're just replanting disease tubers year after year.
Because that's all they have access to.
Exactly. But if you can ship them a packet of elite, disease-free seed in an envelope, you aren't just improving efficiency, you are literally ending hidden hunger.
It really does sound like a silver bullet, but biology is never that simple. The manifesto spends a lot of time on a specific case study in Michigan. Traverse City.
Right, the 45th parallel.
Yeah, and it turns out you can't just take these new diploid potatoes from their home in the Andes and plant them in Michigan. They have a region lock. Why is that?
It's the sun. Well, the link of the day. Potatoes evolved at the equator.
Where the days are always about 12 hours long.
Exactly. So the plant uses day length as its calendar.
Yeah.
But in Michigan, the summer days are long, 15, 16 hours of light.
Good.
The Andean potato sees that and thinks, oh, it must be early spring. I should focus all my energy on growing leaves.
So it grows a massive bush, but no potatoes underground.
None. It's waiting for the days to get shorter to trigger tuber formation. But in Michigan, by the time the days get short enough, it's October and the first frost kills the plant.
Lush foliage and zero food.
Right.
So how do you patch that? You can't change the sun.
You patch the code. Researchers found a gene called STCDF1. It's a signaling protein. In the wild potato, this protein degrades during long days, and that tells the plant, stop making tubers.
And the fix?
They found a natural mutation, what they call a north allele, where a little piece of DNA had inserted itself into that gene. It stabilizes the protein. It basically tricks the plant into thinking the days are short, even in June.
So it becomes day neutral.
It can run on the Michigan server now. And this is the beauty of the diploid system. Once you identify that patch, you can cross it into your elite lines very quickly. You can't do that easily with the clumsy tetraploids.
And once you have that platform, you can start adding other features, like an app store for the potato.
That's a perfect analogy. You start gene stacking. Instead of relying on fungicides to kill late blight, you stack 3 or 4 different resistance genes into the plant's code.
So you're moving from chemical warfare to biological immunity.
And a potential 90% reduction in sprays. That's money in the farmer's pocket and a huge win for the environment.
But let's talk about the user experience, because honestly, most of us don't care about gene stacking if the potato tastes like cardboard. The sources mention an upgrade here too.
This is the UX upgrade. For a century, we only bred for yield and storage. We totally ignored flavor. With diploids, we can now tap into those ancient Andean varieties, the ones with nutty flavors, creamy textures, purple and red flesh high in antioxidants.
So we get the reliability of a modern car with the features of a classic.
That's the goal. But the documents mention a moonshot that goes even further, a dual boot system.
This was the part that just sounded like pure science fiction. Potatoes and tomatoes are related, right?
They're cousins in the Solanaceae family. And potato plants produce these little green berries that look like tiny tomatoes, but they're full of solanine. They're toxic.
Don't eat the green berries. It's the first rule of potato gardening.
Right. But the pathway that makes that toxin is controlled by just a few specific genes. If you can silence that pathway, hack the code, you could theoretically create a potato plant with edible berries.
You're telling me you could harvest potatoes from the dirt and fruit from the vine on the same plant?
A true dual-use crop.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a dormant pathway for capsaicin.
Wait, capsaicin, the stuff that makes chili pepper spicy?
The very same. It's just sitting there in the potato genome, switched off. Turn it back on, and you could have spicy berries. Or imagine a potato tuber that is naturally spicy.
A built-in spicy fry. I honestly don't know if that's genius or terrifying.
It just shows the potential. Once you simplify the architecture, you can build whatever you want.
This brings us to the elephant in the room, though. Deployment. We have this technology, but who owns it? The documents present a real fork in the road here. The walled garden versus open source.
This is critical. In corn, the move to hybrids basically handed the keys to a few massive corporations. Because hybrids don't breed true, you can't save the seed and plant it next year. The farmer becomes a subscriber.
So you have to buy the new software every single year.
Exactly. It's the Apple model. It works. It's slick, but you're locked into their ecosystem. Big Ag would love that for the potato. But there is another path, the Linux model.
The open source seed initiative.
Right. The idea that these genetic patches like the SLY gene or the North Allele should be part of the commons. If a breeder in the Netherlands fixes a bug, a farmer in Kenya should be able to download that seed, grow it, and adapt it further.
But realistically, can open source really compete? If Big Ag has the massive R&D budget, won't they just dominate the market?
It's a struggle. But the barrier to entry with diploids is much lower. You don't need a billion-dollar lab to breed these once the initial tools are out there. You could see a whole network of small, regional breeders creating varieties perfectly adapted to their local microclimates.
It also changes the physical job of farming, doesn't it? The notes mention farmers becoming greenhouse farmers.
It totally shifts the infrastructure. You're not driving heavy tractors to plant tons of tubers anymore. You're starting delicate seeds in trays in a greenhouse, just like you would with tomatoes or peppers. You use vegetable transplanters.
So the potato farmer of the future looks a lot more like a market gardener.
It democratizes the whole process. It could allow for smaller, more intensive, more diverse farming operations.
It really feels like we're standing on the edge of a massive shift, moving from the tuber age to the seed age.
We are. The potato has been lagging behind for a century. This reboot isn't just an option. With climate change and population growth, it's a necessity. We can't feed 10 billion people using Victorian software.
It's funny to think that maybe the most boring item in the produce aisle is actually the most exciting tech story in agriculture right now.
It's usually the quiet ones you have to watch out for.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought from the manifesto, something they called the magnum opus. Imagine walking into a garden center in 10 years. You don't buy a wrinkled old seed potato. You pick up a packet of seeds. And inside that packet is a variety that's virus-proof. Maybe it has purple flesh. Maybe it even grows that spicy fruit. You plant it, and you're not just growing dinner. You're participating in a global network that has finally, after 500 years, updated the code.
A future that is definitely worth planting.
Thanks for diving deep with us on this one. We'll see you next time.